Hello everyone, my name is Jacob and today we are going to discuss the chapter The Quirks of the Quill written by Arushi Lakhanpal. So let's start. Literature can be very ludicrous at times and so can authors. From petrifying plays and electrifying epics to terrible tales and rotten rhymes. Literature offers an array of treasures by amazing authors, priceless poets, disguised dramatists, and weird writers. Often these weird writers create fantastical worlds within their stories, where they live among their chaotic and charming characters. In the journey of creating such fantastical worlds, these weird writers face daily qualms and quirks. As a matter of fact, many of the laudable literary figures have lots of quirks, such as writing during the day or at night, in a car, bathroom, or beneath a tree. Not only they fuss about the writing space and time, but also about choosing what to write with a pencil, pen, crayon, or simply on a typewriter. It means that at times we feel that literature is ridiculous, it's boring, as it has frightening plays, interesting to boring tales or stories, rhymes, etc. So literature gives us wide range of amazing authors, poets, weird writers, and also disguised dramatists, which means the ones who hide their true identity. So these writers create a world of their own imagination and some kind of charming characters as well. So in order to give us a wide variety of stories, tales, dramas, what these writers do? They either stay awake late in the night or they get up early in the morning. That actually means they change their habits. Sometimes they face daily worries. So praiseworthy matter is usually written in either car, bathroom, or beneath a tree. The writers not only choose the space and time, but they also choose with what are they going to write, either a pencil, a pen, crayon, or a typewriter. So now we are going to read about some strange habits of famous writers. Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens, the world-renowned Victorian writer, couldn't work without his blue ink, writing quills, statuettes, a green vase, a paper knife, and a desk calendar placed on his writing desk. It was of utmost importance to him to have all these arranged in the right order before he began writing. Dickens' enormous attachment to these objects brought him creative comfort. His habit of keeping those things in order went beyond his study room. Wherever he went, Dickens adjusted his surroundings according to his needs. Besides the rearrangement of things in a particular order and cleanliness, Dickens was finicky about the direction in which he slept, north to south. This means that the Victorian writer always wanted his blue ink, writing quills, statuettes, a green vase, a paper knife, and desk calendar on his writing desk. He was so attached to these things that wherever he went, he adjusted his surroundings according to his needs. He believed that these objects brought him creative comfort to think more widely. That is what his belief was. He was such a fussy person that he decided the direction as well in which he is going to sleep. That is north to south. Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe, a poet and a writer, mostly wore a black suit and preferred black ink. He was extremely fond of cats. A tortoiseshell cat, Katerina, entered his life in 1839. Katerina was often found resting on Poe's shoulders, observing him as he wrote. She would purr to show her approval of his work. He lovingly called her Kate, and they were inseparable companions. When Poe would go away, Katerina wouldn't eat for days. She even appears in some of Poe's stories. For instance, in the short story The Black Cat, he says, "For months I could not rid myself of the phantasm of the cat." Edgar Allan Poe mostly wore a black suit and preferred black ink. He was so fond of his cat that his cat, Katerina, was often found resting on his shoulder. He called her Kate, and her purr would give Edgar the approval for his work. Both were inseparable, and he used to imagine of her whenever he would go out. Kate, on the other hand, wouldn't eat for days. James Joyce. James Joyce, the determined writer, had weak eyesight and could barely read and write properly. However, the will to write pushed him to adapt to his situation. He was a night owl. To aid his vision, he wore a white coat that helped reflect light onto the paper in front of him. As his eyesight worsened with time, Joyce opted to use crayons instead of quills, to write not on paper but on large piece of cardboard. For this, he used a plethora of colors, from red and blue to green and orange. Gradually, when the double lens glasses didn't work anymore, he began to use a magnifying glass. He described his daily work schedule as, "I write and revise and correct with 1 or 2 eyes about 12 hours a day. I should say, stopping for intervals of 5 minutes or so when I can't see anymore." He abhorred the idea of writing on a typewriter, since it did not allow him the chance to read his sentences slowly, word by word. Whether seated at a gathering or walking around the city, Joyce never missed an opportunity to write. He always carried small pieces of paper in his waistcoat pocket to write down things he observed. He would eavesdrop and collect snatches of phrases, words, and letters from his surroundings, and then later incorporate them into his works. So James Joyce was a determined writer. He could barely read and write due to his poor, weak eyesight, but he adapted to this condition. He was a night owl. It means that he used to stay awake till late night. He wore a white coat that helped reflect light onto the paper in front of him. When his eyesight worsened, he switched from quills to crayons. He used to write on large pieces of cardboard using variety of colors. He was so obsessed with writing that when his double lens glasses didn't work, he began to use a magnifying glass. He used to write and revise his writings 12 hours per day. He didn't prefer using a typewriter. Wherever he used to go, he never missed the opportunity to write. He always carried small pieces of paper in his waistcoat to write whatever he observed in his surroundings. Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf, the eccentric modernist, preferred a room of her own to write in. She would start her morning with writing. She used a 3.5-foot tall table to write on. She was very fond of writing materials, and her desk was like an artist's easel. Just like her sister Vanessa, who was a painter and often designed book covers for Virginia, she was fascinated by ink quills, purple being her favorite. In fact, Mrs. Dalloway, for the most part, was written in purple ink. The color was present everywhere in her papers, from letters and diary entries to manuscripts and page proofs. So Virginia Woolf was different from other writers, and she preferred a room of her own. She used to start her work in the morning using a 3.5-foot tall table. She was so fascinated and attracted to inkwells that her desk looked like an artist's easel. Purple was her favorite color and was present in almost all her writings, letters, diaries, and page proofs. Her sister Vanessa was a painter, and she used to help her sister by designing the book covers for Virginia. Now, let's read about writers' weird ways of walking. If there is one thing that is common among these writers, it is their love of walking. R.L. Stevenson describes this in his essay Walking Tours. This one who walks fast, with a keen look in his eyes, is all concentrated in his mind. He is up at his loom, weaving and weaving, to set the landscape to words. So it means that there is one thing that is common among the writers, that is their love of walking. So R.L. Stevenson describes this in his essay Walking Tours as well. He says the one who walks fast, the one who has a keen, a sharp or a strong look in his eyes is all concentrated. His mind is concentrated and he is ready to weave words into a poetry. Means loom is a kind of apparatus which is used to make fabric. So he says word by word the writer is ready for weaving a new poetry. William Wordsworth is considered the greatest walker of all time. In fact, Thomas de Quincey estimated that Wordsworth walked around 180,000 miles in his lifetime. Wherever Wordsworth went, he wrote poems, immortalizing the places he saw in his verses. William Wordsworth is considered to be the greatest walker. So according to Thomas de Quincey, he estimated that Wordsworth has walked around 180,000 miles, which is approximately 3 lakhs kilometers during his lifespan. So Thomas says that Wordsworth used to write poems about the places that he saw. So in order to prevent to forget that place in future, he used to write poems about the places that he saw. For Robert Frost, walking into the wild offered inspiration for writing. Aldous Huxley walked mainly at night. He observed even if one wants to feel depressed, one can't after an hour in the wind and the moonlight. Charles Dickens, a fast walker, walked at lightning speed. He believed if I couldn't walk fast and far, I should just explode and perish. W.B. Yeats would talk to himself while walking. Virginia Woolf adored walking. She went on long strolls looking for inspiration. Walking provided just the right kind of retreat from mundanity for writers. So it means that the poems written by Robert Frost are the product of his inspiration which he got by walking in the forest, by walking in the wild. On the other hand, Aldous Huxley walked mainly at night. He observed that even if somebody wants to feel sad deliberately or purposely, he cannot after spending an hour in the wind or in the moonlight. That means the surrounding changes the mood of a person. As the speed of lightning is fast, same way Charles Dickens used to walk very fast. He believed that if he could not walk fast and cover a certain distance, he should explode and die. William Butler Yeats used to talk to himself while taking a walk. Virginia Woolf loved walking. To get inspiration and ideas, she used to go for long walks. She believed that walking provided a break from sophistication. A perfect sort of writing abode is of utmost importance to writers. A writer cannot flourish without the right kind of writing space. Some writers went the unconventional route while choosing their writing spaces. Agatha Christie created plots for her stories in her bathroom while eating apples. D.H. Lawrence liked to walk in the wilderness and sit beneath the shade of pine trees to write. He observed, "It is much pleasanter to go quietly into the pine woods and sit and do there what a bit of work I do. Why rush from place to place?" So it means that in order to grow and flourish, writing space is very important to the writers. Some writers have done uncommon things to choose or select their writing spaces. Agatha Christie used to sit in the bathroom, eat apples, and created plots for her stories. D.H. Lawrence liked walking in the forest and he used to sit beneath the shade of a pine tree to write. He observed that it is much satisfying to go quietly into the woods and do the work instead of rushing from place to place. Roald Dahl would write on a yellow pad with the pencil on green writing board while sitting in an armchair. Maya Angelou would book a room in a local hotel solely to write in. The room was supposed to have only a bottle of sherry, a dictionary, Roget's thesaurus, yellow pads, an ashtray, and a Bible. So in these lines, we get to know that Roald Dahl kept a yellow pad on a green writing board and used a pencil to write while sitting in an armchair. Instead of sitting at home or going to the wilderness, Maya Angelou booked a room in a local hotel solely to write. The room that she booked was supposed to have a bottle of sherry, a dictionary, Roget's thesaurus, yellow pads, an ashtray, and a Bible. G.B. Shaw used to work in a tiny shed in his backyard. Mark Twain wrote in a special hut offered to him by his sister-in-law on her farm in Elmira, New York. Vladimir Nabokov used to write in his car parked in a parking lot. So we get to know that George Bernard Shaw felt comfortable by working in a tiny shed in his backyard. A special hut was offered to Mark Twain by his sister-in-law on her farm in Elmira, New York. He used that special hut to write. Vladimir Nabokov preferred to write in his own car parked in a parking lot. Some of these writers were coffee and tea fanatics. They couldn't start their day without a fresh cup of coffee or tea. Honoré de Balzac used to drink 50 cups of coffee a day. His favorite was a Turkish blend. Sometimes he even chewed raw coffee beans. He observed, as soon as coffee is in your stomach, there is a general commotion. Ideas begin to move. Similes arise. The paper is covered. Coffee is your ally and writing ceases to be a struggle. Close to Balzac, Voltaire used to drink 40 cups a day. His favorite was a coffee chocolate blend which he relished after a long day of play rehearsals. Maya Angelou, Jonathan Swift, Alexander Pope, and Benjamin Franklin were some other coffee-craving wordsmiths. Simone de Beauvoir was a great tea drinker. She always began her morning with a fresh cup of tea, which prepared her for writing for the rest of the day. Just like Beauvoir, C.S. Lewis also drank a cup of tea while writing in the early hours. He observed, "You can never get a cup of tea large enough or a book long enough to suit me." Unlike Beauvoir and Lewis, Samuel Johnson used to drink tea throughout the day. Honoré de Balzac was so obsessed with coffee that he used to drink 50 cups of Turkish blend per day. Sometimes, when he did not get coffee, he used to chew raw coffee beans. He believed that till the time coffee is in his stomach, he gets more ideas and creativity to write. He believed that coffee is his friend and helps him in his struggle to write. Voltaire, almost close to Balzac, used to drink 40 cups of his favorite coffee, which is coffee chocolate blend, and he used to do it after a long day of play rehearsals. Maya Angelou, Jonathan Swift, Alexander Pope, and Benjamin Franklin were some other writers who were obsessed with coffee. Simone de Beauvoir always began her day with a fresh cup of tea. She believed that it prepared her for writing for the rest of the day. C.S. Lewis also drank a cup of tea while writing in the early hours. He believed that he can drink tea as well as read a book the entire day. Unlike Simon and Lewis, Samuel Johnson was also obsessed with tea and used to drink tea throughout the day. The art of writing is a solitary act, often accompanied by daily rituals and routines. All these weird writers certainly got the best out of their weirdness. If you were able to understand the chapter, do hit the like button, share it with your friends and subscribe to my channel. Thank you and have a good day ahead.